Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland for any further questions he may have for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to follow up on the ranking member's questions about the at-will issue. So I mentioned in my initial round your statement, the March 18th statement, and that it didn't contain the language with respect to inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office, which comes from 15 U.S.C. Section 41 of, I guess that's the Federal Trade Commission Act. But I think if I'm hearing what your answer was, the reason you didn't include it is because you think the language is superseded. In other words, that Article 2 makes it unnecessary so that the president can fire without regard to that statute.
That's right, Congressman Ivey. After the Supreme Court's decision in SELA law in 2020 that said that Humphrey's executor does not apply to agencies that wield substantial executive authority, whatever was true of the FTC in 1935 is just not true of the 2025 FTC. We're one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government. We have rulemaking authority, law enforcement authority, investigative power. After SELA law in 2020, Article 2 requires that the president be authorized to remove them at will.
Okay, and that's going to be, I guess, a central issue in the litigation that you're a defendant in.
That's right, Congressman.
All right, and would it be also your view beyond this particular, with respect to the FTC, that that's true for all independent commissions at the federal level?
The only one I have a position on, because it's the only one that I've studied myself as a defendant in the litigation and as the agency head, is the FTC. Different agencies are different. They have different historical patterns.
And there's nothing Congress could do about it, I guess, based on the statement you're making, because any statute we passed along the lines of 15 U.S.C. 41 would only be a statute, and you're saying there's a constitutional ability for the president to fire any one of these commissioners at will at any time, regardless of what Congress says.
So not quite, and I don't mean to quibble, but what the Supreme Court said in 2020 in SELA law is Congress cannot insulate from removal agency heads at agencies that, quote, wield substantial executive authority.
I got you. But given your conclusion that this agency wields that kind of authority, short of us stripping the FTC of certain levels of authority, there's nothing Congress could do to protect commissioners from at-will or even arbitrary termination.
At the FTC, yes. And I do want to be clear, my former colleagues in their brief have said that if they agree with the president's and my position on SELA law, they have asked the court to hold unconstitutional statutes that this body passed after 1935. A sort of shocking thing to say.
Fair enough. I want to go quickly to the chairman's questions with respect to the Take It Down Act and, well, your comments about that and AI fraud and impersonation issues, which are of deep concern to me. But I wanted to see if I could get you to talk about that in the context of another statement you made, which was that you want to shift from rulemaking to enforcement. And I want to make sure I understand what you mean by that, because sort of 2 points. One is with new statutes or new areas, in my view, rulemaking could be very important in trying to get ahead of the curve on these things, especially since technology evolves so quickly. You know, to the extent we're trying to legislate to address every sort of technological change, that's going to be impossible. And then the other part with respect to the rulemaking piece, I have heard from business owners that they actually they get concerned about the enforcement component, because in order for them to find out what's permissible and what's not, they have to get wrapped on the nose through a litigation process. Whereas if there's a rulemaking process that gives them guidance, even if they don't necessarily like the outcome of what the rulemaking process is, at least they don't have to litigate it. And, you know, as we know, the litigation piece can take years, potentially, in some of these circumstances. So real quick, I only have 36 seconds left. If you could walk through some of that for me. But the rulemaking piece in particular, are you moving away entirely from rulemaking or just trying to hedge it back to some extent?
When Congress directly instructs the commission to adopt a rule, like it did, for example, in the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, the commission will adopt rules where we're expressly ordered to. A lot of the rulemaking of the last 4 years were rules on Section 5, just our general, anti-fraud, anti-unfairness statute. My position is that we protect consumers most when we take bad actors to court and win judgments, more than spending several years writing a rule, preparing it for release, and then defending that rule in court. For example, the non-compete rule has literally never gone into effect because it was enjoined after its adoption. We could have been using those resources to bring non-compete cases rather than the rule. My view is, rather than to
I'm over time, but real quick. So with respect to the Take It Down Act and the AI fraud impersonation legislation, you're on board for aggressive rulemaking with respect to those two so that they can be enforced and protect the public.
So the Take It Down Act would not require a rule. The second that it becomes effective, we can start enforcing the requirement to abide by takedown notices. That wouldn't require a rule, and we will, assuming that we have the resources available, that will be one of my top priorities. And that's what I mean by enforcement. When Congress passes a law that says to people in marketplace, don't do X, if someone does X, I would rather spend resources taking those people to court than writing a rule about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the